I used to think waking up early was a punishment, something forced upon school kids, soldiers, and workaholics. But what I didn't realize was that waking up before the world does is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. It's not just about the time on the clock. It's about the energy, the mindset, and the ownership you take of your life in those first quiet hours. When I started waking up at 5 a.m., everything changed because for the first time, I wasn't waking up into chaos. I was waking up ahead of it. In just 7 days, this one shift started to rewire my entire approach to life. I began to notice that when I got up before the noise, before the texts, before the demands, I had space. Space to think, space to breathe, space to choose how my day would begin, and that's powerful. Most people roll out of bed already behind, hitting snooze 3 times, rushing through a shower, skipping breakfast, running out the door stressed and scattered. I know because I was one of them, but waking up early gave me time to check in with myself before checking in with the world. In those quiet morning moments, I found a version of myself I hadn't seen in a long time, focused, peaceful, intentional. I started using that time to do things I always said I didn't have time for. I'd sit down with a journal or take a slow walk or read something that nourished my spirit. I'd plan out my top 3 priorities for the day instead of just reacting to whatever came at me. And because I had already done something meaningful by 6 a.m., I carried a sense of accomplishment and control into the rest of the day. That confidence multiplied. It overflowed into how I handled work, conversations, even the way I made decisions. It made me realize that success doesn't start with some massive external change. It starts with a quiet internal commitment. The first few mornings weren't easy. I didn't bounce out of bed with fireworks. There were moments when my body wanted to stay in bed. But I reminded myself, comfort is what got me stuck. Discipline is what would set me free, and each day it got easier. My body adjusted, my mind sharpened, my mood improved, and instead of ending the day drained and disoriented, I ended it fulfilled, because it had started on my terms. This habit wasn't about perfection. I didn't wake up early and run a marathon or build a business empire before breakfast. I simply created a sacred space for myself each morning, and that made me stronger. It made me more prepared, more grounded, and more grateful. It showed me that the most powerful transformation comes from the small choices you repeat, not the giant leaps you rarely take. 7 days of waking up early taught me that your morning doesn't just shape your day, it shapes your life. The world may still be sleeping, but your dreams don't have to. I used to underestimate what just 10 minutes of movement could do for my life. I always thought if I wasn't working out for an hour, lifting heavy weights, or running a few miles, then it didn't really count. But the truth is, it doesn't have to be extreme. It just has to be consistent. And when I committed to moving my body every day, even for just 10 minutes, something surprising happened. My energy shifted, my mind cleared. I started to feel like I had taken control of the day before it had a chance to take control of me. The beauty of this habit wasn't in its intensity. It was in its simplicity. I didn't need a gym, fancy equipment, or a strict routine. Sometimes I would stretch. Sometimes I would go for a quick walk around the block. Other days, I'd do a few bodyweight exercises or dance around my living room to music that made me feel alive. The point wasn't the workout, it was the movement. It was about telling my body, I see you, I care about you, and I'm not going to neglect you today. On the surface, it might seem too small to matter, but when you wake your body up through movement, you're also waking up your mind. You're sending signals to your brain that it's time to focus, to show up, to be present, and that little rush of endorphins. It's real. It doesn't just lift your mood, it lifts your standards. You start to think clearer, make better choices, and show up with more energy for everything else you do that day. And it only takes 10 minutes. Before I started this habit, I'd roll out of bed and go straight into my day without checking in physically. I'd feel groggy, slow, unmotivated, but once I started moving, even just a little, I felt switched on. My posture changed, my breathing deepened, my thoughts stopped racing. I realized how disconnected I had been from my own body, treating it like a machine that was just supposed to keep going, no matter how I ignored it. But your body isn't separate from your mind or your soul. It's all one system. When you move, you reconnect. You return to yourself. What's more, those 10 minutes started to ripple outward. I found myself making healthier food choices throughout the day, because I had already done something good for my body and didn't want to undo it. I felt more confident in conversations, more patient in difficult moments, and more grounded in everything I did. All from a habit that took less time than scrolling through social media or waiting for coffee to brew. And the best part, it gave me a daily win, something I could be proud of no matter how the rest of the day went. That feeling of pride, of momentum, started carrying over into other parts of my life. I didn't need a massive transformation to feel better. I just needed a small promise to myself that I would keep every single day. 10 minutes of movement changed how I felt in my body, but more importantly, it changed how I saw myself. It reminded me that showing up doesn't have to be dramatic. It just has to be deliberate. For most of my life, the moment I opened my eyes in the morning, my instinct was to reach for my phone. Notifications, messages, missed calls, social media updates like a digital avalanche, flooding my brain before I even had the chance to think for myself. It felt normal. Everyone does it, right? But what I didn't realize was how much it was costing me. My peace, my clarity, my ability to start the day on my own terms. The moment I stopped touching my phone until after breakfast, everything changed. It felt like I had unplugged from a noisy machine and plugged back into myself. That first hour after waking up is sacred. It's when your mind is most open, most vulnerable, and most impressionable. If the first thing you consume is someone else's highlight reel, angry headline, or urgent email, you've already lost control. You've handed over your mood, your focus, and your emotional energy to something outside of you, and you're doing it before you've even stood up. When I decided to break that habit, even just for a week, I felt the difference immediately. There was a quiet calm in the space where the chaos used to be. I could hear myself think. Instead of scrolling, I started sitting with a warm cup of tea, or just taking a few moments to breathe, to stretch, to listen to the sounds around me. I noticed the light pouring in through the window. I heard birds I hadn't noticed before. I felt present, not because I was trying hard to be, but because I had finally stopped drowning my senses in distractions. That space gave me clarity, and that clarity gave me direction. I wasn't being pulled by 1,000 things anymore. I was choosing how to move. It wasn't easy at first. My fingers would still reach out of habit, and I'd feel that strange emptiness, like something was missing. But what was really missing was my awareness. I had been sedating my discomfort with digital noise. And when I removed that noise, I had to face myself. It was uncomfortable, but it was real, and that's what made it powerful. I realized I had been outsourcing my attention for so long that I didn't know what silence sounded like anymore. But in that silence, I found something I'd been craving without realizing it: peace. This one simple shift created a ripple effect through the rest of my day. Because I wasn't rushing to respond to the world, I was more grounded when I finally did. My conversations were more intentional. My work was more focused. My anxiety, this low, buzzing pressure I didn't even know I was carrying started to fade. I didn't feel so scattered, so reactive, so drained. I felt like I had come home to myself. Not checking my phone first thing in the morning became a quiet rebellion, a way of saying, I choose presence over pressure. I choose clarity over chaos. And every morning I kept that promise to myself. I built trust with myself. I started to believe, deep down, that I could create a life that wasn't ruled by distractions, but shaped by intention. The world can wait, and it will, but your peace of mind won't. It's yours to protect or yours to lose. There's something strangely powerful about putting pen to paper. I didn't understand it at first. Journaling seemed like one of those things people romanticized but rarely stuck with. I figured it was too slow, too emotional, maybe even unnecessary. But after just 1 week of writing a single page a day, my entire perspective began to shift. It wasn't about writing the perfect sentence or having some life-changing realization every morning. It was about creating space to meet myself honestly, quietly, and without judgment. The first day, I didn't know what to say. I stared at the blank page, uncertain of what mattered. So I just started writing what I was feeling in that moment, tired, anxious, hopeful. That's all. Nothing poetic, nothing deep. But by the time I reached the bottom of the page, something had shifted. I had named what I was feeling. I had pulled it out of the fog and placed it on paper, and that gave me a kind of clarity I didn't even know I needed. Day by day, that page became a mirror, not one that showed me how I looked to the world, but how I felt to myself. I started to notice patterns, things I kept thinking about, frustrations I was bottling up, fears I hadn't addressed. And I didn't write to fix them. I wrote to acknowledge them, and that made all the difference. When you take 5 or 10 minutes to write a page each day, you start to hear your inner voice again, the one that gets drowned out by noise, tasks, and expectations. That voice doesn't yell, it whispers, and writing gives it room to speak. It also became a way to practice gratitude. Some mornings I would start my page with one thing I was thankful for, a conversation, a warm drink, a moment of peace. And somehow, just naming that one thing would anchor my perspective. It reminded me that no matter how hectic life felt, there was still beauty, still goodness, still something worth showing up for. And when you begin your day from that place, everything looks different. Challenges don't feel quite as overwhelming. Stress doesn't take over so quickly. It's like building a muscle for presence, one line at a time. This habit also helped me connect the dots between who I was and who I was becoming. By writing every day, I could look back and see how far I'd come. Even in just 7 days, thoughts that once felt overwhelming started to shrink as I released them onto the page. Decisions became easier when I could see my fears and desires clearly written out. And even on the days when I had nothing profound to say, I still walked away feeling lighter because I had shown up for myself. 1 page a day might not sound like much, but it's enough to change the tone of your entire life. It's not about perfection or performance. It's about presence. It's about saying, I matter enough to listen to my own thoughts before the world adds its opinions. That 1 page became a safe place, a place where I could be honest, hopeful, confused, angry, grateful, or all of the above. And no matter what came out, I felt better after writing it than I did before. Writing 1 page a day didn't just change how I understood myself. It changed how I trusted myself. There's a strange kind of magic in doing the one thing you don't want to do, not because it feels good in the moment, but because of who you become when you do it anyway. When I decided to challenge myself to do one hard thing every day for a week, I didn't realize how much it would reshape how I viewed discomfort. We live in a world that constantly tells us to avoid pain, to chase convenience, to take the easier path. But growth doesn't live on the easy path. Growth lives in resistance. It lives in the moments when you're tempted to back down, and you choose to rise instead. At first, the hard things were small. I made that uncomfortable phone call I'd been putting off. I had the conversation I didn't want to have. I took a cold shower, not because I had to, but because I wanted to prove to myself that I could. Each time, my brain screamed for an exit. It gave me every excuse later, tomorrow, not today. But every time I ignored the voice that wanted comfort, I discovered a new one underneath it, the voice of courage. There's something powerful that happens when you intentionally step into discomfort. You stop being afraid of it. You start to see that fear and avoidance are just habits, and like any habit, they can be broken. Every hard thing I faced was like a rep in the gym for my character. I could feel myself getting mentally stronger, not in a loud, boastful way, but in a quiet, grounded way. It was like I was rebuilding trust with myself, proving that I wouldn't fold under pressure, proving that I could show up even when it wasn't easy. The thing is, we already know what we need to do most of the time. It's just that what we need to do is usually uncomfortable. Whether it's speaking the truth, asking for help, saying no, pushing through resistance, or staying consistent. Those are the very things that stretch us. And when you do one of them each day, even just one, you start to transform, not because life gets easier, but because you get stronger. What surprised me most was how the momentum built. After a few days, I started seeking out the challenge. I wanted to feel that fire in my chest again, that moment when I wanted to run and chose to stay. I started to crave the feeling of pushing past my limits, of expanding what I thought was possible. And that didn't just affect the hard things, it spilled over into everything. My confidence grew, my decisions became sharper, my resilience deepened, because once you prove to yourself that you can handle discomfort on purpose, you stop fearing it when it shows up unexpectedly. This wasn't about punishing myself or seeking suffering. It was about choosing the path of growth over the path of least resistance. It was about remembering that strength doesn't just appear. It's built one hard decision at a time, and you don't need to climb a mountain to build that strength. You just need to face what you've been avoiding. Doing one hard thing each day didn't just change how I handled fear. It changed how I saw myself when fear showed up. For a long time, I believed that my mornings were where the day began. But what I didn't understand was that my mornings were actually being shaped the night before. I would go to bed scrolling through my phone, letting the noise of other people's lives fill my mind. I'd drift off without direction, without clarity, without peace, and then I'd wonder why I woke up feeling anxious, rushed, or lost. It wasn't until I started practicing a nightly reset, just 10 quiet minutes of intention, that everything started to change. This habit didn't require a lot. I didn't have to follow a complex routine or spend hours winding down. I just had to give myself a few undistracted minutes to reflect, reset, and prepare. At the end of the day, I'd sit in silence, sometimes with a journal, sometimes with just my thoughts. I'd ask myself simple but powerful questions. What went well today? What drained me? What did I learn? It wasn't about judging myself. It was about noticing, observing, gently learning who I was becoming, one evening at a time. Then I'd look ahead. What do I want tomorrow to feel like? Not just what I need to do, but how I want to show up. Calm, focused, energized, I'd write down 3 simple goals or intentions for the next day, nothing overwhelming, just enough to wake up with direction. Sometimes it was as simple as drink water before coffee, or have a kind conversation with myself. Other times it was a work goal or a reminder to stay patient. But that act of looking forward gave my mind a target. It gave my sleep a sense of purpose. I also stopped letting my phone be the last thing I saw before I closed my eyes. Instead, I replaced that habit with stillness. Sometimes I'd read a few pages of a book, or breathe deeply with the lights off, or visualize the next day unfolding the way I wanted it to. Perhaps the most dramatic started to chlllenge to undert stir. Attend that technologic sleep isn't just about doing physical rest. It's about preparing your inner world for what's next. When I gave myself that space, my sleep became deeper, my dreams clearer, and my mornings smoother. The best part was how subtle yet powerful the results were. I started waking up without that frantic energy. I no longer felt like I was being thrown into the day. I was stepping into it, with intention, with clarity, with calm. Even when the day didn't go exactly as planned, I noticed I was more centered, more grounded, because I had begun the day with a quiet sense of control that had been planted the night before. This nightly reset became a sacred boundary. It was a way of telling myself, you matter, your peace matters, your time, your energy, your rest, they matter. It became a ritual of respect, not just for my future self, but for the version of me that had carried so much through the day. Instead of collapsing into sleep, I was releasing the day with gratitude, and that small act of closure helped me carry less, sleep better, and wake lighter. 10 minutes at night taught me something that changed everything. How you end your day shapes how you begin the next.